may say something that is actually different from where I sit now, but it might go, oh my God, yes, that's it. So my truth is not an absolute. I'm not attached to it. I'm very happy to move. But all I can say is, I know what I've experienced.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reinforce the Horse. Today we are here with Kathy Price. From a young age, horses have been the passion in Kathy's life. She comes from a scientific background, gaining a BSc Hans degree in zoology. Her mindset then was always based on the scientific paradigm of you had to be able to measure it, replicate it, and explain it for it to be true. That was until 2003 when she and her horse Midnight went to a horsemanship clinic with clinician Len Judd. This clinic was the moment of transformation, a spiritual experience that changed her life. From that weekend forward, she stepped into and embraced the world of energy and connection. Her need for scientific explanation fell away, and her mindset became, my experience is my truth. Now, 21 years on, after many years of studying energy, quantum physics, healing, spirituality, and training in several energetic modalities, Kathy is well established in her own work, which she calls Point of Balance. Kathy, welcome to Reinforce the Horse. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, and thank you so much for the invitation. This is so exciting, and I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, we're so delighted and honored to have you here today. Thank you so much. So I want to jump right in and ask where your horsemanship journey began, because we've mentioned in your bio that you loved horses all your life. When did they enter your life?
Well, there are two stories, two explanations. Apparently, right from as soon as I could speak, I wanted a horse. So every birthday, every Christmas, can I have a pony? Can I have a pony? And I lived on the outskirts of London. Neither of my parents knew one end of a horse from another, and both of them scratched their head as to why this child of theirs was so manic. And so it went on like that, and I was gifted 10 lessons. I think it was 10 half-hour lessons when I was 10 years old. And my poor dad used to have to drive me out on a Saturday afternoon, having very little spare time because he worked 5.5 days a week, for the lessons. And I can still remember my first lesson. The first name of the pony was Willem. I can remember a little indoor school. It was on the outskirts of London. And I'll always remember one day as he was driving me out there, bless him, and he was Polish, and my sort of nickname was Katinka, and he said, Tinka, darling, he said, can you not take up running? Because it was taking up so much of his time. And I sort of looked at him and went, no. So it was sort of ingrained in me from a very early age. And many years later, I remember talking to my mum, and we were discussing, well, why am I so horse mad? And there were two explanations. And one of them was that my dad's uncle back in Poland had been very keen on horses, and maybe I was this genetic throwback. And I've got one picture of my dad when he was about 9, sitting on a pony, not really wanting to be on the pony. And the other, which I prefer to go with, is my mum said, of course it could be the time when you were 2-year-old and you fell off a donkey on Paynton Beach, Paynton being a beach, a holiday resort, and you might have banged your head. I mean, I didn't, but I prefer that because it explains a lot about me. That maybe I did bang my head when I was 2 years old, and that's my excuse for everything. But yeah, it's been ingrained in me. And so I had lessons until I was about 18. In secondary school, I used to go for lessons after school. I begged, borrow, stole any horse I could. I didn't actually own my first horse until I was 32. And that was the horse that actually took me to the horsemanship clinic.
Tell us more about this horsemanship clinic and your horse Midnight.
Yeah, I have now had 3 horses in my life, and each one of them has most definitely come with a purpose to me. Midnight came to show me I had to find the way, and her favourite word was no, and she'd just look at me and go no, and I had to find a different way. And I went through all sorts of things. I was riding English because that was the way we were taught, BHS. Then I went to Western, thinking suddenly if I put a Western saddle on, my horse would suddenly be trained to Western, which totally was not the case. And then I discovered Pirelli, and that was a turning point because it made my brain open out to something different. And then it was while I was doing Pirelli that a friend of mine had moved down in Pembrokeshire, which is a county about 70 miles south of me. And the people that bought her place had invited Len Judd over to do a horsemanship clinic. They'd met him in America. And I went there. I had no preconception about what he was going to do. I thought it was going to be more about, lift this rope, do this, do this. And he did a clinic, a demonstration on the Friday night. All of it was about energy. It was nothing I'd ever experienced. And I went with a very good friend, Val. She'd taken, the first time I'd ever been away with my horse. And also the venue for the actual clinic was in a dip. So there was no mobile phone reception, which was brilliant because nobody could phone me up from home going, oh, I've got a sick cow or something like this. What do I need to do? It was just beautiful. It was just complete, I was in the moment there. And he just started talking about energy. And he'd work with one of the horses at a time in the round pen, and he'd be saying, and this horse is feeling this and doing that, and I was transfixed. And I will admit to spending a lot of the weekend crying, but it wasn't upset, it was wonderment. It was, oh my God, this is what it's all about. And I can remember walking up the driveway to get a signal to phone my friend. And I phoned her and she said, and I was just crying my eyes out, oh my God, it's amazing. And then she was crying her eyes out, oh, I'm so pleased, And it literally changed me. That weekend changed me completely. I went in the scientist and I came out, I didn't know what I was, but that was the moment of transformation. And everything about that clinic, the talk of the energy, the seeing the horses, the realizing these horses were this personification of energetic magnificence, if you like, and connection, that set me on I'm quite a hard-nosed researcher, that when I get something I'm a bit, right, okay. And so the minute I got back, that was it. It was, okay, I need to find out more. And it was, I think 3 days later, I was in a bookshop and a book about Reiki or energy healing, I can't remember, it was Reiki, which I didn't know what it was. I just picked this book up and it opened up and it explained what some people experience when they have Reiki attunement. And they're talking about this feeling of wonderment and all of this stuff. And it was exactly what I'd had at the horse clinic. And that's the only reason I went and studied Reiki, because it was like, I want more of that. It was complete self-interest. It was like, no, But in the end, I did that took me to the 3 levels of Reiki and everything like that. And I used it, whatever. But it was that moment, that horsemanship clinic, that was the starting point.
Wow, that's beautiful. It sounds like there was a major transformation between you and your horse during that clinic. Did you feel like that was the point in which spirituality opened up for you and your horse collectively and then leading? Like, was this the beginning to point of balance?
Yeah, this was the very beginning. This was 2003. So from that moment forward, I was wanting information. I was studying, I was researching, I was listening, I was looking, I was experiencing. So I just read book after book after book. I'm sure many of your guests say the same thing, that I should own Amazon, because it was like, oh, I buy this book and what else has anybody bought? Oh, I'll buy that one and that one. And I was actually reading books then, not listening to them, because I hadn't discovered Audible. So I was sitting reading, and then I found downloads and I was listening to talks in the car. I put them on an MP3 player and click them in, because we didn't have what we have now. And so I was being immersed in all of this information about energy and connection and possibility and healing. And then I was also going through different energetic modalities. I did, as I said, the 3 levels of Reiki. I never taught it. I used it, and I would scan with my hands or a pendulum. People would say, oh, yes, you found where that is. And, I was like, oh my God, how did that happen? I have no idea. But there was, I always say that I'm lazy, because with Reiki there's quite a bit of ritual and there's words, and I did all of it. I learnt it off by heart, and and I used it. But there was a little gremlin in my head going, "Do you really have to do that? Isn't there an easier way of doing it?" And so that was the sort of impetus, the thing that got me searching. And so I went on and studied various other modalities. And then I found something called the reconnection. And that was the one that was the big change for me, because there is no ritual. You just do it. And so I studied that intensively for about 5 years and became a practitioner, a certified practitioner, every bit that I could. And I travelled all over Europe going to their different, they had beautiful seminars then with amazing speakers. And so I did all of that. All of the time as well, we had a livestock farm. So that was the grounding part, which I look back now and I'm so grateful, because it kept me connected to the earth. It kept me connected to reality, if you like. I couldn't float away, because basically, excuse the French, I had to go and shovel shit every morning. But I was grounded, and also very in touch with nature, because we were livestock farming, and so we were out in all weathers all the time. And so that part for me I was really, looking back, very lucky, very blessed to be able to have the two sides to my life that ran parallel, because they both became interwoven, and it's led me to this place now.
It seems to go hand in hand, doesn't it? Like the aspects of getting to the horses, which we've talked about with other guests on the show, about them being continually grounded to the earth. I mean, they're standing out in the paddock, say, and they're always connected to Mother Nature. They're out in the elements in most cases. For me, I mentioned this, I think, in one of our last or most recent episodes of like traveling to New York City recently, and just feeling the concrete jungle that we live in as human beings. And a lot of people never get to branch out of that. And it's interesting how, like, as you're growing up, or as I was growing up, it was like those places like New York City, Los Angeles, at least in the United States, London, maybe in the UK, is like these coveted areas of like success, but it seems like the more people that get there, and the people that I've interacted with that have actually gone and lived in those places, are like, yeah, there's a certain level of energy about it, but it's like it drains them, and they're looking to get to that existential place of peace and solace, which ultimately, as we know, is about connecting with nature. This leads me to this thought and this idea, and then a question for you. Your system or your work called Point of Balance, and this is really synchronistic for me, because I have this Palo Verde tree out. It's maybe 100 feet from where we're sitting. It's outside, of course, but Palo Verde trees don't really grow that well in our area, because they require a lower elevation than where we're at. But this tree came to us as a transplant a few years ago, and then a storm came through and ripped it in half. And I nursed it back to health, and I talk to it every day for the past almost half decade now. And it's probably about 3 times the size of the native mesquite trees that were here prior to it. Probably, maybe a year or more before this tree. It's blooming this year. And I recently just felt like the intuitive kind of like feeling to connect with it. Now, a lot of people would call this like tree hugging hippie sort of stuff, but it's told me its name. Its name is Bridget, which I had no clue what Bridget meant. I had to Google that, and
Oh,
it's like strength and vigor, um, and then this
oh my
past
God, that's
week
so cool.
it gave me the word balance, and there's so much synchronicity in that word alone. But then here we are talking to you about that, and I have a feeling that with the energy that I already feel in this conversation, that you have more to just impart on me about that word. And so I'll leave it there. I know that's not really a question, but
How long?
you know,
I was going to say, how long have you got? I will go quickly back though to the point you were making about living in the city, because I grew up in Wembley, which is a suburb of London, and it's quite leafy and green, and there was a big open space. But I can remember at a very young age, we lived up on a hill with a sort of a bow window which looked out, and you could see quite far to a place called Harrow. And I can remember screwing my eyes up, trying to get rid of the houses and imagine it with trees. And that was probably when I was 4 or 5. So I think there was a clue. I didn't want to be in London. I accepted it for what it was, but it was my yearning was, I've got to get out of here. I'm going to get out of here, and that's what I did. But yeah, point of balance. Okay, so the continuation of the story of exploration was I found the reconnection. That became my thing because it was so simple. It was, you do it. And as I always say, you don't have to be wearing purple and your purple knickers to do it. There's no ritual that you have to have this or do that. You can just do it. And that to me was everything, because that's the way I felt it should be. That was like an innate thing. I think that for me, everybody can do this. If not as good as me, then better. I think it's an innate property that everybody, property inverted commas, ability that everybody has. But what happened was that I went through the various stages of learning within the reconnection, and it was brilliant. But I went for a recertification in 2015, and what happened during that was the most pertinent thing. For me, it was just a no-no the way it was carried out, and there was no judgment, but it just made my mind up that, okay, this is the moment that I move away. I become Kathy Price. I don't become I'm no longer a practitioner of. And that's what I felt. I always needed that as my security blanket, that if anybody said, what do you do? I could point them at their website or point them and say, oh, this is, just look this up. This is what I am. And that was the moment of transformation again, when I went, no, I'm me. I'm the sum of all my parts. I'm the sum, mother, farmer, working with energy, horse owner. Every part and every experience I've had has taken me to this moment. And I could take you to the place. I take my dog for a walk, and there's just down the lane here. That's where the point of balance came to me, the name. And I liked because it was a play on words, in that what's the point of balance, and also the point of balance, the particular place, if you like. And so that's where the name came from. But the inference and the feeling behind it is this, for me. We are energy. This is quantum physics. A cell is 99.999% space. There is nothing else except energy and information within a cell, and it's the vibration that forms that, whether it's a solid, it's a human, it's the table or the chair or whatever. And we are connected from the innermost proton within us to the furthest most universe that we don't even know exists through the quantum field. So my way of working is, my belief is, every system, whether it's a tree, whether it's an animal or a person, wants to be in balance, because balance is the place of ease. And it's not a particular place as such, because obviously as we go through life, circumstances change. It's what is the best place for this particular second, and this particular second, and this particular second. So it's a constant process. And for me, my whole work is about helping the system find balance, find that place of ease. And again, we were talking healing. I listened to your podcast on healing, Jason, which was so beautiful, and it resonated with me so much. I was like, oh yeah, oh yes, acceptance, love it. But for me, the only healer is the system itself, because there is nothing and no one, and I think we'd know about it if there were, that can make a system heal, be it a person, an animal, or a plant, in that they have no option but to return to balance, to return to health, to be cured, whatever word you want to use. There is nobody and nothing that can do that. For me, it's whatever interaction we take, whether it's through energy, that's something I do, whether it's, shiatsu, homeopathy, allopathic medicine, it's the healer. The healer is the system itself. It's the person, it's the animal. And if it's appropriate, what's been given to it is appropriate, the system will heal itself. In other words, the system will move to that place where it moves back into health, into balance, into ease. And so the way I look at it is that when I work by intention, my intention is for that system to be able to access the information that is contained within the field that it requires. I don't know anything. And that's why when I work, I very often haven't got the name of the person. I haven't got, I've got no idea why they've come to me. People will get in touch with me and say, can you work with my dad who's ill in hospital? That's all I need, because they have given me the intention. I work through their intention. There is only one dad, and that's the one person. And I use the example sometimes if, Sheila from Australia gets in touch and she's got 10 black horses all called Skippy in the field, and she rings me up and says, can you work with Skippy? I don't need to know which one it is, because her intention is all I need. She's working on that one particular, she's got to be in touch with me. So when I work, my intention is, the connection happens, I feel it through my heart. There's like a pulse, and then my hands start tingling. That's all I can say. And the tingling is very unique to each system. And the only way I found that out was once when I usually leave a gap between sessions, and I mainly work distance, so that I'll message someone, say I'm starting, I'll work and then finish, message again. And one session ran over, and so I sort of almost quickly had to turn off the intention to that person and move to this one. And my hands changed. The feeling and it was like, oh my God, I never knew that. It's the universe sends me these little messages, sends me these experiences for me, and it usually will only do it once, because it will go, I've shown you that once, you don't need to see that again, just take note. It's like, okay, thank you. So for me, that's all it is. So I don't decide, direct, dictate anything, because I don't know. The system does. I truly believe at an energetic level, the system knows how to heal itself. But basically stuff gets in the way. Our humanness can get in the way. Emotion gets in the way. Trauma gets in the way. But I never ask for feedback, because it's nothing to do with me. And I've only recently realised why I don't ask for feedback. And that's because I don't know why people come to me, I wouldn't do anything different. There's no point in that. It's, if 6 people came to me with depression, I would just do the same thing. And, maybe 1 or 2 of them have amazing results and others don't. I can make no guarantees. I don't know. But for me, it's a case of just, I can't change. As long as I sit in integrity with what I'm doing, that's all I need to do. And so it's only when people get sort of their own volition come back to me and say, oh my God, I just want to tell you what's happened to me or my horse or my dog or whatever, I sit here blown away. I really do, because I'm sitting in my farmhouse in the hills of Wales, sort of working with a horse or a person or something the other side of the world. So that the human part of me that is going, how does that work? But the other side of me, which has now really accepted the energy and connection, is almost going, well, it's obvious. Why wouldn't it work? So yeah, that's sort of where my balance part comes from. That was quite a long answer to a short question.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a lot more experience in the work. Are you not just merely, and I don't want to downplay it at all, but do you see yourself as like as just a mere container of holding space for the healing process to occur?
That's a really interesting, and I love the word merely, because for me that's the truth. I see myself not so much as hold it. I mean, it depends on the terminology and people's understanding, but for me I'm more of a facilitator, in the sense that the analogy I use is, if you think of a child's ball pit, which is filled with thousands of or hundreds of different coloured balls, the kids can jump in it and they don't get hurt. So say we've got red, yellow, green and blue. And suppose the system I'm working with needs 525 green, 95 yellow, 1,000 red and 25 blue or whatever. Technically speaking, they are in the field, they are connected to the field, and they could find those elements which would bring them back to balance and bring them back to health. They would heal themselves by finding those different coloured balls. I see my work as being a facilitator which would bring order to the field. So instead of all the balls being jumbled up, they'd all be in different containers. So it'd be much easier for the system to find the red ones, find the number of yellow ones, find the blue ones. Maybe I help put the right number of balls in there. I have no idea. But that's the way I see it, is that it's about, I'm trying to think of the word. Oh, goodness, I'm having a complete brain. I was going to say something really then. So I'm ordering the field. That's it. I'm bringing order to the field, so that then the people, the system, can more easily find the information it needs to heal itself. So rather than holding space, you could maybe you could use that terminology if that's what fits. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know is one of my favourite phrases, because I don't know. I'm merely making supposition and how it feels and how it might happen. I would so love to do really hardcore scientific randomized double-blinded experiment on this. I think there's there are elements that you wouldn't be able to do, because I truly believe that if you took somebody who had nothing to do with Reiki, didn't understand a word of it, and said pretend to be a healer, I truly believe they could be that healer, because it's an innate process within us, and so therefore you'd skew all the results and whatever. I mean, I do believe that would be the problem, but oh my goodness, there's so many things I'd love to do. The scientist in me, really comes forward, and I'm also an arch skeptic as well. So I won't dive into something and think, oh yay. I'll go, really? Okay, carry on. And if somebody introduces me to a new concept, what I tend to do is go very quiet and sit with it, and then go, oh, how does this feel? How does this feel? And then I'll move forward from there. I won't sort of go yay or nay too quickly. And I say my experience is my truth, but I'm not trying to convince anybody else that this is my truth. This is their truth. I'm sorry. This is my truth, and if it doesn't fit, leave it behind. I'm just giving information. And I'm also very open that talking, with you today, you may say something that is actually different from where I sit now, but it might go, oh my God, yes, that's it. So my truth is not an absolute. I'm not attached to it. I'm very happy to move. But all I can say is, I know what I've experienced, and I'm not going to deny it, no matter what anybody says.
Yeah, that goes right back to the idea that we all live our own experiences, and it's such a beautiful thing to acknowledge. And it's like, when we come together collectively and meet the people or animals that we totally resonate with, it's like there's a spark within us, but we're all living our own different experiences. And I found that, like, connecting with the horses through this it's caused so much joy and empathy, compassion, and love for all that is, really. I mean, we have 2 wild Mustangs and effectively a rescue Bashkir Curly. And my Mustang, my best friend, my heart horse Willow, her and I are like, we're just best friends. We we do just about everything together, but our experiences are naturally different by virtue of me being a human and her being a horse. It's such a powerful, such a powerful thing. I don't know where I'm going with that. You'd mentioned a while back that you've done a good amount of travel and learning. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the adventures you've gone on and what you've learned from different people and animals along the way?
Yeah, thank you. It's been very recent because livestock farming, you can't get away, which, I did 30 years of it. And so when my daughter and her partner took the farm over, it was like, yay, I'm off, bye. And last year I was very naughty. So first of all, I was very lucky. I went to California in 2019 and stayed with Warwick. And that's where I met my lovely friend Jane Pike, and we went to the Western States Expo, which is again on in a couple of weeks' time, I believe. So that was a wonderful experience. Seeing all the different ways that people interact with horses at the expo was mind-blowing, because there's nothing really like that over here. And again, okay, this is where the universe sets me up, okay? So Maddie Shambo, Mustang Maddie, was showing at that actual event. And as what would happen, Warwick's horse, Petey, was about 5 stalls down from Maddie's. And we went to check him about 10 o'clock at night. And Maddie had one of her horses tied outside. And Warwick knows her and introduced us all. And she was saying, oh, he's very anxious. If he can't see the other horses, he gets anxious and he makes a hell of a mess in the stable. And inside me, it was like, oh, can I zap him? Can I zap him? But I didn't dare. I was like, oh, God, she's going to think I'm mad. She's going to think I'm mad. No, better not. Shut up. Don't say anything. So anyway, I got up early next morning to go and muck Petey out. And Maddie was there. And I thought, okay, this is just too much of a coincidence. And so I said, look, this is what I do. I totally understand if you think it's mad, but, and she said, oh, no, carry on. And so I worked with him. And the one thing, you've got Mustangs. And I'm so blessed that I was there to work with Mustangs, because she, had various Mustangs there. And for me, they're elemental. They have got a lot of they understand energy very quickly. They feel it, they know it. Whereas the more domesticated that may have been born in a different environment or may have come from generations of domestication, there is not that instant connection. Yes, sometimes, but that was the feel I got. Because as soon as I started working, they all go, gone. I've got videos of them that they've just gone. So Tory, his name was, and I worked with him. And then that was in the morning. And then Maddie was using him in the arena about an hour later, and I went to watch her. And he was standing there yawning his head off, and she was going, oh, yeah, he's quite relaxed this morning. Yeah, Kathy just did this on him, and he was almost like had his legs crossed, sort of doing, and his arms folded, just waiting what to do. But the beauty was that the next morning, went to see, and his bed was as pristine as anything. So he'd released that anxiety. And that's how easy it can be, is to, do that. So my travels have allowed me to have these amazing experiences. So that was America. Then I went to the Summit podcast in Texas, which was mind-blowing. The first one we had in 2022 in San Antonio, Texas. The meeting of people, the presenters, nobody knew what anyone was going to talk about, but the general trend was always, right on point. The energy, oh my God. But literally the floor was moving. And it started a couple of days before, the energy. It was so many people, and even people watching it online were saying the same thing. And so that was a massive experience. And it was you do 20-minute talks. There is a phenomenon where you walk on stage and every ounce of saliva disappears from your mouth when you're going to speak. It's like, why does that happen? So yeah, that was quite an issue that I've been very, very lucky that I spoke again in Australia, and it was much better then. And I'm actually speaking again in Birmingham in the UK this year. But that first time, I'll never forget. I was walked on and went, I actually can't speak. But it was an amazing experience being there. So there was that. And then I went to Australia. And it took me 63 years to get there. I've wanted to go to Australia my whole life. And amazing people that I've met through my work. I've never met them personally, but become friends with them. Facilitated this amazing journey I had over there. I held a couple of clinics with other people or on my own. But one of the most spectacular things was I went up to the Daintree rainforest. And the story behind that is Rupert Isaacson, in his book The Long Journey or The Journey Home, sorry, I can't remember, he speaks about taking his son to various shamans around the world, and one of them was this shaman Harold Mooks in Australia, and he spoke about him when he was talking to Warwick, and I just thought, I've got to meet that man. I've got to meet that man. And so I didn't even know if he was still alive, because it had happened a while ago. And I got to know Rue a bit then, and he said, oh, just go up there, you'll find him. And I'm thinking, Rupert, it's Australia. It's rather big. You just don't turn up and find somebody. But I've got a wonderful friend, also called Kathy, over in Australia, who has worked with the Indigenous Aboriginal people extensively. And she'd actually met Mooks before. And we found out he worked in the national park as a ranger, and a guide. So we rang up and they said, oh, he'll be there on Tuesday. So we were there, and I was literally practically shaking. I was so excited to meet this man. He wasn't working that day, needless to say. They said, oh, he'll be here tomorrow. So we went back up there. And I was standing talking, and someone said, oh, here he is. And I turned around and he was there. And this poor man must have wondered, who on earth? Because I was like, oh, hello, my name's Kathy. And he's like, yeah, right, carry on. But we got to meet him, and he was so generous with his time. We sat talking to him for ages afterwards, and I was asking him about his spirituality, how he worked, his energy. It was just the most amazing experience that I still can't believe it actually happened. And I hope one day, not too distant future, to go back and connect up with him again. So yeah, there was that, and then I went back to Texas for another podcast summit as an member of the audience. Then last January I went to Bali. Myself and Christine Dixon, we held a retreat in Bali, and I've never been to that area of the world, and it was the most, the people there are just something else. It was a really, we called it the Magic and Meaning retreat, and my God, it was for all of us. Christine had been there before, and she was the driving force behind it. She knew what how to organise, because she'd been there before. I'm so grateful that I got to do these things, because it's like enlightened me, opened me up, and given me a peace as well, because I know I'm a traveller, and I have had this opportunity to travel. I'm not going to stop, but I might be a little bit more, might stay home a little bit more this year, just a bit. So yeah, I just think it's when you can have novel experience and step into a different culture and a different environment, it just opens you up to so much more connection and so many more experiences when you can just immerse yourself in it.
Gosh, you're speaking my language in so many ways. I think you're definitely part of my soul family. I mean, so again, I came across you, or you came across me, or somehow we met in the quantum, through Warwick Schiller's show over a year ago, and then I've since had 2 trips to India, and I've been on this healing journey from leukemia, and the whole proverbial shell cracking open. Australia and New Zealand are definitely on the list of places to go for me, and Bali is coming up actually pretty soon.
Ooh.
And geez, I don't even know where to go. I'll go back to, you mentioned something that piqued my interest, and just like you said something about not knowing, and this poem came to me on the 29th of April, so it's 2024, so it's not too long ago. And it says, the more
Oh,
I
no,
live, the
right,
more
yeah.
I don't know, the more I become comfortable in my unknowing. And I don't, it sounds like you've had sort of that process of realization in your life.
That is, yeah, yeah. That is so beautiful. That's so simple, but so profound.
It just, I come from a past of, trying to know everything and doing a lot of different things, a jack of all trades, if you will, but a master of none. And just finally coming to peace within and about myself that I don't know, and I'm so fascinated by people who do. I mean, you mentioned Rupert Isaacson. We just talked to him yesterday. So we recorded a
Oh,
session with him. It was
cool.
fascinating. And I'm sitting there, and every guest that we've had on this show, I'm just like the jaw, the mouth wide open, just like in awe of the things that, like, how do human beings keep all this stuff in their brain, and how do they regurgitate it? And then I even asked Alyssa, like, how do you see me fitting into this? Like, I feel pretty dumb in the grand scheme of things, It's like, but
Oh,
but it's such a
no.
beautiful
No,
thing to
no,
just
no.
be able to sit and be with who and what we are, and understand the unknowing. And I don't know about you, but horses have really guided me into that process of understanding that.
It, what you say is so profound for me. Um, I don't know. For me, is my. I'm not going to say powerful, but it's the truth, because I don't know. When I work with people or horses or whatever, 95% of the time I have no idea why they come to me. And it makes me laugh because people, if I describe my work, which I find really difficult, because people say, "What do you do?" And I sort of go, "Oh, yeah, what do I do? How do I describe it?" And I have sort of said an energy worker before now, and then they've gone, "Oh, which energy company do you work for?" And it's like, "Oh God, that doesn't work." Okay, so now I'm more a facilitator to help you heal, help you find, navigate life's challenges and find your purpose and your passion. Because I think finding your purpose and your passion is healing in itself, because then we become who we're meant to be. And I had an amazing experience recently when I came back from Bali and my internal clock was way out of kilter. So I was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but very full of energy. So I get the computer, my laptop out and start working. And I was thinking about the talk that I'm going to do in Birmingham, and it just wrote itself. I just sat there and wrote and wrote and wrote, because I find it difficult to type because my typing is so awful. And I'm a bit of OCD, that if I see that there's a mistake in the typing, I have to go and correct it, which of course then the flow goes, so I write. So I wrote it all down. And then, it was beginning of February, so it was quite dark in the morning. And about a couple of hours later, I got up and took the dog for a walk. And I was actually shoveling shit on the track because the horses were out on the track. And this realization came to me so powerfully. And it was, this is what I'm meant to be doing. This is my purpose. And the feeling was as though this huge light cracked open from my heart. And it was like, oh my goodness. And I stood there, but the feeling also was as though it was a safe being unlocked to release that light. And I was sort of quite curious, like, why would it need to be locked away? But it was almost, the feel was, it was locked away for safety. and it was only when you were truly in that place of realization would it be released, because then nobody could change it. No, what anybody said, it was safe because you were there, you were in that moment. I mean, I was bawling my eyes out because it was so profound. So literally shoveling shit and crying because I just found out my purpose. But and that's the story of my life, I think, grounded, but then also this amazing stuff happens. But yeah, it's so, I've forgotten the question now. I'm sorry, I went on a diversion then. But for me, the don't know, that's right, the don't know is because then you're open to the next step. When you say I know, you stop learning, because why would you need more information if you say I know? So for me, I don't know, one of the most powerful sentences, because you leave yourself open. And the other thing I was going to say, you were saying about your place in this and your poetry. I truly believe that we're energy and we are constantly exchanging information with the field, which connects all of us. And so we are giving information back into the fields. We are informing the field. And Nassim Haramein says we are the universe informing itself from a relative viewpoint. So in other words, what you were saying as well, Alyssa, was that every person has their own place, their own experience, and that is unique. I call it our unique magnificence, because we are magnificent, we are unique, we are powerful. And that's why my whole work is about helping people hopefully to step into that, to know who they are and know how powerful they are. And I know power has many connotations, and power corrupts absolutely, and all of that, but this is about you being you. And so I always think, I sometimes work with people who've come through really deep depression and they've come out the other side, but you can see that they're ragged because it's been hard, and it's been a hard experience. But I'll quite often say, you do realize that you managing to get through that experience, you've put that information in the field for the next person to find. So you can help the next person that is in your position when you're in deep depression. That information is there to help to inspire them, to help them move forward. And sometimes the change on their faces is so profound, because they suddenly go, oh my God, there's a point to it. There's a reason, I've been through it, but there is a reason to it. And so just as we get information from the field, and I truly believe that all the information that we've ever needed, so go back 4 million years, the information on how to make an atomic bomb was probably there, but we were not in the place to find it. And I think we learn everything for a reason, but it's what we do with it that matters. And that's where I make it quite clear I am a complete supporter of modern medicine, because there'd be millions of people suffering, dying, dead if it wasn't for it. However, we do realise it's got slightly pushed off course by the financial side of stuff. And I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. But it's not about, it's bad. And quite often, people will, the general thing of an energy worker, oh, charlatan, you're dangerous because you're telling people not to go to the doctor. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I can't see why they can't accept we can work together. Because if somebody's belief is that the doctor will make them better, which is what I was brought up with, carry on. And if I can help you within that, I will be beside you with the energetic side of it. But do not deny what we've learned, because those things are there for a reason. And people will sometimes say, if I describe my work, oh, it's just placebo. And I'm going, yes, you've got it, because they've just actually said the person has healed themselves through their thoughts. Yeah. Carry on. Brilliant. If that's what it is. It's
fascinating you bring that up. A couple things come to mind. One of our past guests, Tara Coyote, who was stage 4 breast cancer, admitted to hospice, basically knocking at death's door, is now, I don't know how many years off the top of my head, I think it's well over a decade, cancer-free. And in her early stages of healing, she was very adamant against allopathic medicine. And she wound up getting to a space where allopathic medicine was like the last ditch effort to save her life, and it ultimately did. But I had asked her, like, did she think it was the actual medicine, or was it her changed idea about the medicine that opened up the portal for her to heal? And I think that's what ultimately happened.
Yeah.
Where she decided to take chemotherapy or whatever the treatment was as an elixir of healing, rather than as this poison that's going to eradicate all the good and bad in my system and leave me hanging
Yeah.
and hoping for life. And I found the same in my own healing journey. Alyssa actually like had brought up
Yeah.
not long ago after I got a blood test, and the blood test wasn't as like positive as I had wanted it to be, because I was diagnosed with leukemia back in 2017. But she looks at me and she says, do you feel like, do you have cancer right now? And I'm like, no, I actually feel really great. And
Yeah.
she's like, well, that blood test is actually in the past, so right now you're cancer free. And and
Oh, I
that to
love
me
it.
is healing, because we don't know, like, if we're going to make it another 30 seconds or 30 years, whatever it might be. And it's living in that moment. I'm open to all types of medicine and modalities. And I really don't discount anything at this point. It's interesting too, when we were talking with Rupert yesterday, because I had questioned, like, how do you get to know these places when you travel around the world, and how do you connect to these people? And he's like, well, like, a lot of times he'll just like connect with an allopathic medicine hospital and ask them, are there any like sort of like interesting people who come through with their feathers, or like, uh and they're like, yeah, there's actually this woman who comes through and like works her magic, and we're cool with it because it works. And then he'll go and like connect with people in that way. So I think in a lot of areas, in a lot of ways, especially outside of the hardcore like Western medicine areas, like in the cities and stuff, I think around the world there is still a lot of or it sounds like anyway, there's a lot of cooperation between more indigenous ways and allopathic medicine running hand in hand. Do you know anything about that, or have you seen any of that?
Yeah. No, I know that over here in the UK that there are certain hospitals where Reiki practitioners go in because they realise that even though they may not own up or sort of accept that there's a healing going on, in whatever way you want to do it, in the sense of it's curing whatever malady they might the person is suffering from, they realise that the presence of a person performing an energetic routine can be beneficial. And here we have the thing about person to person. The fact that somebody can sit there with you, whatever they're doing, whether they're doing Reiki or, but if they are present with you, that in itself can help you heal because you're being seen. And you're being heard. There was a doctor over here, Dr. Sampania, who he was studying the outer body experience. When people die, supposedly, inverted commas, I'll use that, die on the operating theatre, and then they have to be resuscitated, but they can describe exactly what went on. They can hear the words and they can, describe everything. He wanted to study that. And he had various ideas of how he could put a monitor facing up to the ceiling so that they always seem to describe that they go up into the corner of the room and they look down. And if there was, first of all, he said if there was one picture up there, they could describe it. But then they said, but somebody could leak out what that picture was. So he said, well, let's have random generated pictures, a flow, so nobody knows what pictures is where, at what time is there. And he really wanted to do some research into it, about consciousness, if you like, to see what the results were. And he tells, I can't remember the name of his book, but he tells the story of how he went round a lot of the consultants, and a private conversation, the consultants would say, oh yeah, I had this really weird experience, and they'd relate all of this experience they've had, but put it down on paper they wouldn't, because they were so afraid of their reputation being tarnished by this. And then of course he could not get any funding, because where's money going to come from if you find out about consciousness? How can you market it? So none of the drug companies would know, the universities didn't want to know because it wouldn't bring anything into them. I think he went over to New York and he has managed to do some research there. But I just find it interesting. And along the same lines, and I know Warwick has spoken about this as well, and it features my favourite word that I don't like to say, which is statistics, okay, because I always lisp and say it wrong. I think it's Real Magic by Dean Radin. And he talks of a conference of statisticians, that's even worse, where the keynote speaker was the chairwoman of their company. I'm not going to even try to say that word again. And she said, if I present to you, because she had studied with Dean Radin when they'd been doing the remote viewing, the American government had been doing lots of psychic stuff, and so they were looking at that, and the statistics showed that it was highly probable, that this was real stuff. And so she said to this amassed group of statisticians, if I presented you with evidence to show that this was true, would you believe me? In your language, so that whatever it is, the statistical wording would be that it's highly probable. And they all went no, because it wasn't within their experience. And so no matter what you told them, they wouldn't believe it. And that's where I feel this sort of work that I do comes into it, because it's so outside people's understanding or imagination that it could happen. And so they'll shut it off. And so you obviously won't get research into it because it's going against the allopathic medicine. How can you make money out of this? And especially if you get to a place where the person can heal themselves without any outside influence, which was what you were talking about, with the lady with cancer, in the sense that she changed her mindset. And I think Dying to Be Me, the book by Anita Moorjani, that's another one where she changes, her perception. And another book, have you ever heard of a book called The Journey by Brandon Bayes? That, I looked it up actually the other day, and I bought it in 2005. Somebody had told me about it, a friend had told me about it, and I read it. And basically she's very into spirituality. She's diagnosed with a huge growth in her womb, and the doctors want it removed straight away. And she says no. She bargains with them, and I think she gets 28 days to go and try and heal herself. And the book is about her journey of going to various people trying to find things. And within the book she tells about meeting this, I think it was a lady, can't remember what country. And the lady describes a method of going through your life from childhood, and any time that you found there was a moment of strife that never got resolved, sitting round a campfire with the people involved and resolving it. And when it was resolved, drop down to the next level, and you keep going till you can't remember any more moments of strife which have not been resolved. And she describes how she got through all the fires, the campfires, and then she was at a black hole, and she was frightened because she knew she had to go into this black hole, but she didn't know what was the other side. Now, I cannot remember what happened when she went through that black hole, apart from the fact that she survived and she actually cured herself of the growth. It disappeared by the 28 days. But me being me had got to that stage in the book and thought, I'll have a go at that. So I sat there doing the campfires and sort of going through, found the black hole and thought, well, she survived, ta-da boys, boof, dive straight through. And what happened to me, I'm sitting in the upstairs of the farmhouse looking up to the hills. I was floating outside the window right here, and I was part of everything. It was like I was part of the trees, the air, the ground, everything. And I can remember thinking, if I stretch my right arm west, I'll touch America. If I stretch my left arm, I'll touch China. And I don't know how long it went on, but it was if you like, one of the most profound moments, and it's so clear in my brain now, even now. And so you were saying about the book, The Reconnection, how that can bring things to you. People have described just reading that book and they step into healing, because it's something comes forward. But for me, and it was so funny then, because I went back and I suddenly realised the second half of the book was instructions on what you do to get through the thing, but I hadn't bothered to read that. I just, oh, okay, she did that, so I'll do that, and let's see what goes on, which is about half of the course. But yeah, so these books are amazing.
Yeah, what was that book? Is The Journey Home?
The Journey by Brandon Bays,
I'm gonna
Brandon
look that one
Bays,
up for sure.
Bays.
Sounds really interesting.
It's, yeah, that was a very early 2005. It's so funny because thank God for Amazon, you can look
Oh
up
yeah,
your past
yeah.
history and find out. I still can't find where I found the book The Reconnection. It wasn't
Yeah,
Amazon. It was not Amazon, and that in itself, you know, was
I remember
a
you
turning
mentioning
point. But
that.
yeah,
Wow, what a gosh, Kathy, I think I could talk to you for hours. This is becoming the norm with our podcast guests. It's just like so much to go into. Uh, Alyssa's got a flight to catch here today. Off, she's off
oh
to Los
goodness.
Angeles here soon. Um, how can people find you? Uh, where what's a good way if you want to give a verbal
Um,
shout out? Of course,
yeah,
we'll link all your social and websites on the show notes page. But if you want to shout out verbally, so our listeners know where to find you.
thank you very much. Yeah, the easiest is my website, which is www.kathyprice.co.uk, KATHYPRICE. And I'm on Facebook as well. Just look up Kathy Price or Point of Balance.
Very cool. And you
Those are the
do
easiest.
virtual sessions with humans and horses and other animals, or is it just okay?
Anything, yeah. Humans, horses, dogs, cats, parrots. I think I've done a
Wow.
monkey once before. Yeah, so it's anything in that respect. So yeah, I work distance and I work, in person, but because I live in such a remote area comparatively.
Wow, you're awesome. This conversation has been awesome.
Oh,
It's been
I loved
oh,
it.
it's been so fun, and your work is absolutely fascinating to me. Such a beautiful you're an incredible human being. Thank you so much for joining us
Oh,
today. It's been an
bless
honor.
you. Thank you. I mean, I so am grateful for people like yourselves who are there disseminating this information and bringing your own take on it. Because, as I say, for me, every modality out there has pertinence because it's appropriate for someone. It's not one thing is better than another. None of that. It's just, and what you're doing is showing what's out there, and I think it's magical. So grateful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy. And for all our listeners, thank you for joining us once more on another fine episode of Reinforce the Horse, and we'll catch you again next time.